Happy Thursday, folks. I only just logged in the laptop a little bit ago. We have nothing at all on the agenda, so if you have ideas, feel free to add them.
Greetings, container fans.
Hello. We got a completely empty agenda, which is an opportunity for either talking about something that somebody else wants to talk about or an early meeting to wrap up.
Well, I for one always appreciate having time back. And today I was gonna have to drop at the half-hour mark anyway to talk to GraphQL friends, but I also want to talk about container plumbing days. So I don't know, Brandon, how would talk about that for a minute or two or 10? What do you think?
We can chat about it as long as you'd like to.
Well, I also want to see if anybody else wants to talk about that thing. I don't want to be selfish.
I already gave them the opportunity before you walked in. They haven't come off mute yet. They're
I'm
all
just
completely
disappointed,
involved.
Tianan. You always have something to say.
He's
Just
always
really.
letting us know.
Sometimes I choose not to say it.
Oh,
I do have some restraint.
I'm proud. I
I'm,
don't this week. I've been like maxed out. I'm spinning several plates, but um like I find that it makes it harder to sort of like I don't know, yeah, like control my responses to things, and I just say stuff that I probably shouldn't. Glad this is getting recorded also.
Do you need me to turn the recording off for you? Do you need to
No,
get
not
some
at all. It's
venting
just
done?
I was gonna tell on myself, but I was like, no, I'm not gonna. It's a recording. I won't tell on myself today. Too much.
So what's happening with container plumbing days? How are things looking over there?
Well, so we had 19 submissions. And I think really kind of what it boils down to in terms of accepting the top talks is deciding kind of what we want to do with our time. And we could run it like a mini conference, and that would be fine. And we have, the like there were several talks that scored above 4, which is quite high. And frankly, we don't have a ton of time. We've got about 3 hours. And so, if you do traditional sessions during that block, that's only like a few talks. So, we can just take the top talks and, boom, Bob's your uncle. But that doesn't feel very strategic. And I guess what I'm asking is like, is there some other objective beyond having material that's recorded and relevant for OCI that we would like to achieve? And the answer can be no, or it can be maybe. I don't know. But
So what were the statistics again? 19 talks, and how many of those were above 4?
yeah, let me go get logged in. Of course, I logged out. That's nice.
Oh, I thought you just had the number off the top of your head.
When I did have, well, so I do, I did remember that fact, but I'm not logged into, now I'm logged into Sessionize. We had 19 proposed sessions from 18 speakers. And then let me remember how to get to the evaluation. Stats. Nope, that's not there. I'm trying to go look at the number of how I saw the sessions, maybe. This is sort of a confusing tool. All right, there we go. And then if I see overview, no, sessions. No.
I've been
Oh yeah, there we
looking.
go. There we go. Okay, found it. Jeez. Jeez, McCrease. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 7 talks actually. That was a few more than I thought that were 4 stars and above. So it's on a 5-star scale, and typically the 4 stars are going to be the ones that had the highest, obviously the highest consistent ratings, and then there were a bunch that were not ranked very highly at all. So anyway, that's kind of the demographics, if you will.
Do we
And then I'll
have
be,
overlap in topics where we could find the best talk for each kind of topic?
I feel like these are pretty diverse topics. So, and this is where maybe for the purposes of discussion, since we're talking about people's individual presentations, we may not wish to have this part recorded, but because I don't want to, say, oh, well, this person's talk, this was lame. That would be kind of a bummer to have on recording. But there were, I feel like there's some university or diversity, excuse me, uh in in the presentations, and I'm not seeing a ton of overlap here. Monitoring file systems inside with fan notify inside containers was the highest rated talk. Security for distributed model training, a talk on urun C, Minikube, Skiff. There's a Skiff talk. CRI.
I'm glad that the ones that scored high are OCI related, because I remember looking through there, seeing some that's saying, thinking to myself, this person probably submitted this talk to every conference and just is hoping that it fits somewhere.
Yeah, I didn't see. We had one other. I was on like the GraphQL conference, for example. We had somebody submit 19 different AI slop generated proposals. We didn't have that problem with this group, which is great. Um,
I thought you were going to say like AI topics, but AI slop is even
I
worse.
mean, like, no, it's like I used, some AI tool to generate a topic that might be interesting, and it was like a lot of stuff that just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's
That happens.
oi.
But not here. We didn't happen to us. So I think I recall that the answer is no, but none of you all are currently planning to go.
It's a no
As
from me.
Yeah, I feel like Tianon said no. And
You feel correctly.
yes. Um, and I don't know, Harry or Syed or Brian, if y'all had heard about Open Container or excuse me, the
Container
Container
Plumbing
Plumbing
Days.
Days um, mini summit at Open Source Summit Europe. So that'll be in Amsterdam if you happen to be local.
I won't be surprised if there's someone OCI related that'll make it to Open Source Summit
Yeah.
and would add an extra day or so to attend one of those events. But
Yeah.
it's just getting the overlap with people that are here.
Yeah. Um, and that's why it's like, okay, then is it a strategic opportunity to go find, you know, an OCI community or start to cultivate an OCI community um in Europe. Amsterdam's a little bit of a tech hub. I mean, there's like, there's some interesting companies that have big offices there. Um, but yeah, Brian's making a great point. Like it's just hard, right, for people to travel for lots of different reasons. And so frankly, localizing it a bit is good because that's easier for people to do. Yeah. Um, well, so I mean, let me just ask a question, thought exercise for the group. Um, Hypothetically, if Container Plumbing Days was happening in your hometown and you could go, like what format would you like to see it take, right? Like what kind of experience as an attendee and as a community member of OCI would you like it to feel like?
I know in past when we've had just OCI gatherings that we'll have somewhat of an agenda, but we also have a fair bit of open time
Mm-hmm.
and it gets you a nice birds of a feather. People want to talk about all kinds of stuff. A lot of those have been at KubeCon, and so it's a lot easier to find people that want to break off for a couple hours in the middle of all the KubeCon meetings
Mm-hmm.
and presentations to talk OCI, where this might be a little bit of an extra step to stay an extra day. But that is very different from what Container Plumbing Days used to be, which was the online event, and they had a lot of talks at that. I'm trying to remember if it was even single track or if it was multi-track, but they had a lot of content, but it was all, since it was online, everybody was just joining it from home. And so it made it a lot easier to get a lot more variety in
Mm-hmm.
the topics they were able to pull in. The the downside of the all online is you don't get that networking. So my inclination is that if you've got the in person, it's nice to have a networking opportunity.
I mean, I fully agree. And I do think it's a missed opportunity when the project has space set aside if you don't make time for that kind of like networking or working group discussion. And I guess um what obviously we would need to kind of make that successful is one or two point people who will be on the ground in Europe um, with the technical expertise to like facilitate and jumpstart those conversations. I will be there, not for not just because of OCI, but because of other obligations. But and I'm very happy to help juice that, but I am not a technical expert. So that is where we would need in this technology. So I would need to rely on some folks who are heretofore unknown to me on that.
Do you have access to their registration sign up?
I can. I sure enough, if I ask real nice, they'll give it to me. So that's a good point. I can look and see uh if some of our friends will be there and who they may I also have to pester Chris about a long list of things. So I can also see if he'll be there.
I know he has shown up at previous OCI gatherings before. I'm accidentally mistaked his bag for Amy's bag, and Amy did not approve of me making that mistake. She was like, "Come on, I have standards."
I need to call her. That's funny. So yeah, this is kind of the status of the session. I've got to kind of get a little bit of a plan back to our colleagues on the events team. For our time. Um, but I would be happy if any of you all are interested in kibitzing on this event, even if you're not gonna be able to make it in person, you know, your perspective is like super duper duper valuable. Um, that's it. This is what I had to chat about today, Brandon.
All right. How long were each talk slots?
So we actually, so this is kind of nice on the summit days, like we get to decide. There's not a we get a room for a period of time and we can say, oh, what we're going to do is only 15-minute talks, or we're going to do, 20-minute
Did the
talks. What
CFP say though?
so we asked people to give us an idea if they were sharing a lightning talk or a session presentation. Guidance for lightning talks is that it's like 15 minutes or less, and session presentation is like 20 to 40 depending on but the reality is for either session presentations or lightning presentations, we can go back to the speaker in all cases and say, hey, given your topic or material, we'd like for you to expand on this and take a little bit more time, or can you kind of trim it down a little bit and make it a lightning talk. So either it's more a what was the speaker thinking, and there's your ballpark, and then we can go back and have the kind of refinement conversation
See,
with them based on what we want our schedule to be.
my my experience from running the local KCD last year was that people were pushing to have more talks but shorter. And so they were saying the 30 minutes was too long. People were getting a little bit bored in the middle of the talk that it wasn't quite their topic, and they wanted to have maybe 20-minute talks and then give some more time for either more talks or networking time.
So I'm fully like with them on that. I have found in my old age that I um would much rather have a packed agenda of lightning talk sessions, and especially if those are like maybe grouped thoughtfully and then there's like time between
Yeah.
them for discussion. Like I just feel like that's a lot more. I mean, to your point, Brandon, people sort of lose the thread sometimes in the middle of these.
Well, when you have 30 minutes, some people like to stretch out a topic that really could only fill 20 minutes max, and even the speaker's getting bored of themselves at a certain point. Um, other people are other people are having a very difficult time compressing it down, but they just have to find a way to do it, and that
Yeah.
keeps the audience interested in it. Our lightning talks were only 5 minutes long. We kept those real short, and so that kept the pace moving. Where you're up there, you get to do your little pitch, say what you're interested in showing off, and then boom off to the next one. And we kept all those on a single laptop as best possible, just because technical swapping around can take 5 minutes itself if you're not jumping up there and just hitting next on the screen.
Yeah, as a speaker who sometimes loses her train, I also appreciate having a shorter time slot. So, maybe a strategy is to kind of take these talks, but take them as shorter format talks and do kind of some facilitated like networking connected to the like grouping, thematic grouping of the lightning talks might be just like a good approach. Yeah, that's that's exactly what I do, Brian. Oh wait, what were we talking about? Oh yes, this other thing. Sorry about that, everyone. Thanks for going on this journey with me. So that's the kind of thing I think we would want to avoid.
I
Um,
can only wait for Coop Cuddle deployment to go through its reconciliation for so many minutes before I get bored of watching the speaker. I
mm,
try to stall.
hmm
So one other thing to consider if we got 3 hours in there is if you put a break in the middle, that might be a good
Oh
opportunity
yeah,
for bio break, maybe bring in some snacks or something, coffee or something like that, and then throw a little bit
yeah,
of extra time around that for socializing as well.
yeah. There's like no world where I would let this go longer than 90 minutes without people like getting like a structured opportunity to leave their chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise, and frankly, I think it should be like even maybe more broken up than that because people are gonna um disengage,
Mhm.
they'll sit down and then they'll get bored and they'll look on their phone. Um,
I mean, I do that even when I'm not bored.
we just can't, like, it's just so funny. I was like, I cannot not have like my phone when it's really hard work to put the phone away when I'm in a conference, like, and sit there
The only
and
thing I will say is as much time as I've got my phone out for the conference, it's my note-taking app, so I am
oh,
actually paying attention. But yeah, we're all addicted.
yeah. Well, you're a better person than me, Brandon, to be
I'm
candid.
laughing more at Brian's comment there. 500 milliseconds, time to switch. New topic.
That's funny. Um, okay, well, I mean, I really appreciate y'all's input on this. I just want to make this feel good for everybody, and um, I think it will be. I'm hoping we can use it as a um something of a recruitment and community building opportunity there.
Mhm.
Um, but it is a little different. It's open source summit. It's not a KubeCon. So we'll see, we'll kind of, I think I will absolutely pull the registration list. So, I mean, it's in September, so that reg list is going to be short right now, but, I'll pull the list and see who we
So
have. And yeah.
I've got a very important question.
Mhm.
Have you gone through and looked at the speakers for diversity?
I have, and, it's depressing,
I'm not
unfortunately.
surprised. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure that we
I
don't
think
show
we
up with an all-male
had.
speaker lineup on the event because
No,
that's,
we won't, and we can't, and that'll be maybe something I have to kind of like figure out how to uh like account for. But we have one non-male identifying
yeah.
of 18 speakers, which is like I mean, that happens. I mean, on the company diversity and sort of like
Yeah.
other things are fine, but it's just on the gender diversity, it's uh not great. So
I mean,
um
I'd say you could try to pick from this group, but then it would be you. So,
it would be Tianon in a wig. Kidding. Uh, I'm sorry, that wasn't appropriate.
and that's when
Um
Mike shows up.
yeah, yeah.
Totally fine, Jory. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I don't think it counts. I wouldn't count it, but I'll take it.
I am, oh man,
Mike,
we
did you even
had,
hear the comment that you walked in on, or no?
No,
okay, that's
not.
good.
You missed Tianon in a wig.
Yeah. How we're gonna fix the diversity lineup for
Container Plumbing Days.
yeah. So one of my favorite presentations that I've ever seen was at one of our JavaScript conferences. There's a drag performer named Jay Query, and she did her talk in drag, and it was like frankly phenomenal. But she like does like these educational videos and that kind of stuff. And anyway, like we could, I don't know, we could find OCI drag performer, maybe. I don't know. That's a stretch. Um,
I'm trying to decide which notes to take here.
none of them, please. Yes. Mike, are you going to Amsterdam for Open Source Summit Europe? No, okay.
I got booked on 20 different things and
Yeah.
then had a passport issue and yeah.
Oh, I just got my kids' passports in the
Yeah.
mail.
I had to recycle mine, so I'm waiting still. Yeah. Go.
Um, all right. Well, how about I generate a proposal and send it for the schedule and send it out to the list that we created for the program committee, which some of you are on. If you want to be added to that, just let me know. Jay Burson at linuxfoundation.org or jory.com or hey you, please add me to the list. We'll all make that happen. And then, yeah, I'll send a proposal and then we can kind of refine it a little bit and um, we can always adjust. It's our event. We can do what we want with it. But yeah, but I have to run, sadly. And I appreciate you all.
Thanks, Jory.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. So, Mike, the rest of this, we didn't have any topics on the agenda. So, Jory was like, you got no topics. I'll talk about Container Plumbing Days for 30 minutes. But that opens up if you've got anything you want to talk about, or the floor is still open for the rest of the gang here.
We're good. Still want to solve that problem I mentioned last week, but yeah, I haven't made much more progress towards
Now you got to
what's an
refresh my
artifact,
memory.
how do we pull it down, how do we extract them? as a part of the CRI API, but it's really, in my opinion, something we need to solve as well.
Yeah. So the way Cryo is doing it, we don't know yet, but we suspect they are doing it.
Yes. I actually, oh man, maybe next week I'll do this. I'll give you a small demo. But yes, they are mounting the artifacts directly in the container, and then they're using the annotation as the file name.
Yeah.
Which annotation? Is that the ORAS file name and what title annotation or something like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah, the one that Oros adds.
So if that annotation isn't there, what happens?
I don't know.
Surprise file name.
But yeah, that's the sort of thing that okay, where are we going to define annotate? Yeah, how's this going to work? You know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Obviously,
as
annotation
Tionon's-
it's not an end result. You know, it's not an end goal, right?
Yeah, annotations are fickle, right? Like you can just change them dynamically.
Exactly.
Needs to
Yeah.
come from something solid.
And it's
as
not just
Tionon-
that. It's not just there's an annotation. It's also the, you know, what about layers? Which one do I throw on first? All that sort of, it's some conversation needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to make a whiteout artifact. But while we're going that direction here, Tionon's throwing all the tar header questions. So UID, GID permissions, MTime, all that stuff. Any
Please no, Tiernan. That's what I'm trying to say. If they really want it to be a layout, just use tar.
Yeah, just put a single tar header in front of your blob. It's like
Exactly.
a kilobyte at most. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be compressed. Nothing has to be compressed. It's just a single tar header
Just a yeah.
pre-pended on the blob. You can even use a range request to ignore it when you're streaming the content later.
I mean, that would be fine, but do you mean you want it to actually be a tar file with a header at the beginning? Yeah, I mean
the header makes it a tar file.
that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
just drop the tar header right
Not
before the file contents, and Bob's your uncle. You have all the fields you need to make this work because tar was designed for this.
Right. And then as far as layers go, same thing should apply. We should probably have maybe an annotation that says use the default for images, or more likely something opposite of that says don't, you know, these aren't to be done in you know, in the order. I don't know. Just grab the first one. There needs to be some way to define, you know, which blobs, how to order them, that sort of thing. Yeah. Just saying. Okay. Yeah, that would be cool, Tina. Right. Otherwise, say Harry, was it? Yeah, we cited. Sorry. The thing that I was concerned about, we talked a little bit about last week, was the encoding. If it's a text file, that sort of thing. How do you know what the encoding is? Who's going to define that? What, you know?
Does it matter?
Yes.
I feel like it would just be a byte stream. You're just outputting it right to the file system.
Yeah.
But if it was written in from one file in
Are
in
you
one
trying to get
encoding,
into like mainframe EBCDIC to
I
ASCII
almost said
formatting?
it. I almost said it. but that's the kind of issue you run into when you don't have the right, when you don't know what the encoding is. You can possibly have some errors, right?
I'm going to say everything's binary.
Yeah.
You just ship it as is.
Okay.
No
Well,
conversion.
yes. Then that makes it a lot easier, especially if
See?
the binary is a tar file. Right? I mean, it's yeah.
I have not FTP'd a file in ASCII format in a very long time.
Yeah, as long as you both agree what the encoding is, that works just fine. It's when you don't know what the encoding is. You can make an incorrect assumption.
Yeah, but that's application level though. Like as a container runtime, don't really
But
care what
but
the encoding
but
is.
you're asking us to mount it,
Yes. So
create the file, right? In the file attributes for the operating system, you're going to get the encoding written down as a particular one. And the question is which one? And we don't know. So the application doesn't have the opportunity to set it. It would be set if it was in a tar file. You would just, right. It could be
I
a
don't think
bash,
tar
it
does
could be
that.
a bash script, and you set it as executable. You get that in the tar file. You don't get it when it's a file that you just copied in. You don't know whether what was that a bash file? I don't know.
So the permissions you would get, but the rest of the encoding, I don't think tar is going to help you on that. You'd need some other thing that does, like you're doing line feed translation for Windows to Linux or something like that.
I
That would
believe
be
it's got
another layer.
encoding. I believe there's an encoding description for the pure plain text files.
Tianon, help us out. Is there an encoding in that tar header?
We can take a look, but yeah, it needs to be there.
Why would there be?
Yeah, I didn't think there was.
I don't think there is.
So you think they're all text files or whatever the
just
default
files.
is? They're just default.
From the
Okay.
perspective
a
of the
binary
file
stream.
system, it's just a file.
All right. Hold on.
Like there are different file types like hard links or symlinks or character device nodes or block device
Yeah.
nodes, directories, a FIFO,
Right. All those things. Yeah. Tar file.
but there's not file encoding.
Yeah.
Just a file.
I'm
It's
looking
just a
up the
file.
spec.
I mean, I know where you're going with that, Mike,
I'm
but
just checking.
I
Yeah,
haven't.
just checking the yeah if it's in there. Bum, bum,
There's definitely places where I have gone through that pain, and I'm happy to not be going through that pain right now.
file.
I helped a company migrate off a mainframe a long time ago. It was interesting.
I sometimes worry about various platforms, and yeah, it's big Indian type stuff gets in the way sometimes. Tar file not skip slash import tar transform. That's not what I'm looking for. I'll take a look and see if it's. I could have swore it was in tar.
Unless it's maybe like a PAX record in there.
Yeah, something. Mhm.
And all the stuff I've done ever. And I've just, like Tianon, I just kind of take the tar file as is. And Site, I think, does the same thing. Just
Yeah, that's all
no,
we don't
no
put
encoding,
any
no
transcoder.
translation.
Right, we
Yeah.
don't do any translation at all.
Yeah, none of that. I'm too lazy to try to solve those problems. Yeah, some of the PAX header stuff talks about the character set in there. So
Yeah,
there's stuff that I think most of us never even touch.
the header's always ASCII, but I was going through.
But now that character set, I don't know if that is for the file or if that is for the file name.
internationalization issues as well. 18N. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, that would be interesting if you have to actually do the translation on the extract. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, some people are just saying just use UTF-8 or UTF-16.
That is the right answer.
I'm just saying that's not ASCII.
But ASCII is UTF-8. UTF-8 is not ASCII, but ASCII is UTF-8, isn't it?
It's in UTF-8, but
Uh-huh.
but a
It's a
particular
subset.
version. It's a particular version of it. Yeah, of ASCII.
It's
Yeah.
a subset of that character.
It's not this. It's not the Windows one. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's not UTF-16. Nobody wants to touch that.
So much fun. People complaining about switch to UTF-8 when untarring to Windows. Oh man. So there are some bugs already, and yeah.
This
And the
is
answer
the-
is binary. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you're right, Tina. I don't think we throw the encoded attribute onto the file, sort of leaving it up to the user.
It would end up being the platform doing it that would have to put that in there. And
Exactly.
you know, if you're making platform specific images, then if you build the tar on the mainframe and you extract the tar back on the same mainframe platform, you did as binary both ways. You didn't do any translation, you're okay. It's only if you try to move something between platforms you're going to run into a problem.
Right. Yeah.
But even
We could use
then,
it, and we can use an annotation to set the UTF-8 char set would be one way to do it.
well, the easy way I think we've done in OCI is we just say everything is UTF-8 that we touch.
Yeah.
We've already said that for the JSON.
Code page. Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, I learned something new. We don't have to worry as much as I thought about that, although it's the same kind of issue. If the file was created in something else that's not the default of the platform, then we're going to run into some issues. Cool.
Out of curiosity, just seeing some of the comments go by and thinking to myself, has anybody tested cryo for a path traversal attack when you're using these volume names? If someone set the title annotation at dot dot slash dot dot slash dot dot slash dot dot slash, that's the password.
You know, we have an implementation of handling layers that already manages path traversal attacks.
We do. I'm just thinking someone probably rewrote some of this stuff to do the volume out, and I'm wondering if they
Yeah.
remembered all those things.
Yeah, sorry, that was a cheeky way to say we shouldn't have rewritten this. We shouldn't have done this. We shouldn't re-implement tar. Like, tar is bad. Don't get me wrong here. Tar is awful, but it is simple, and every tool in the ecosystem has already had to implement it. And so if all you need is a file name, eventually you're going to want Unix permissions too, or a timestamp or something. If you just put 512 bytes at the beginning of your blob with a tar header in it, now you are suddenly a tar file. You can use a range request to ignore those 512 bytes when you read it if you want a streaming data stream that doesn't include the tar header. That's easy.
Can a volume mount a symlink? I'm just joking at this point.
Yeah, I mean, now you can have different file types too, right? You could have a directory, you could have a symlink. Your directory can have permissions. The solutions aren't amazing and perfect, but they exist and they're widely implemented and widely supported, especially for things like path traversal attacks.
What was ORAS doing? Are they doing RTF or some other format besides tar that I'm not familiar with, or what was the plan? I haven't seen what I remember there. I heard some conversation about wanting to pick a different format than tar, but was there some work on that? Anybody remember?
I mean, right now they just upload the file as is. There's no,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of why we have OCI artifacts, right? Like, yes, we can tar everything, but we introduced OCI artifacts to not do that. Tarring also changes your SHA-256, right? So you can skip 256, but like 512 bytes and download the file, but then you have no way of verifying the hash. Like the hash changes.
Well, each blob has its own SHA.
Correct.
Okay.
But
And then
if you're verifying the hash, then verify the hash of the whole thing and then strip the 512, because to verify the hash, you have to stream the entire X gigabyte blob, right?
Yes.
So what's another 512 bytes?
or you index it and do the 512 a few times, right?
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand, like, OCI artifacts exist now and people are using it. So why is it a bad idea?
I don't. It's not so much a bad idea. The question is, okay, what is the specification for doing this, right? Do we literally have to use annotations, or are we going to do something else? Right now, for the OCI images, the actual specification is to use tar files. Okay, so I mean, that's just the way it is, right? It just So the question now that it's not tar files is, okay, well then what are they, right? If they were binary, that means one thing. If they're text, okay. If they're sure, fine. If the encoding is by the default for the default of that platform, but even a platform, every file system can have a different encoding as the default for that file system. I just looking it up, right? So you could have an issue where something fails, but we could just pass that on. We can pass that on, or we could, sit down and have a conversation about, should we use tar files as the default for these new artifacts that, artifact blobs or layers, right?
So I want to kind of give a slightly alternative response to Saeed's comment. Yeah, we've got OCI artifacts today, but when we talk about this, we're talking about mounting a volume. And so I think it's okay to say, look, you can push an artifact to a registry that is just an artifact to do whatever you want to do. But if you want to volume mount this thing, by definition, what you're doing is a file system thing, and we're going to require a tar for that scenario.
That's certainly the kind of conversation I was looking to have here, right? It it was in the context of, and now we want to mount these artifacts, not just right do something with them and pass it on to an application via
You could
some
always
other
have another
API.
tool. You could have another tool doing something completely different, and it's an OCI artifact, and it could be just a byte stream going to that other tool and doing whatever it wants to do with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've defined that. But once you get into the scenario that you're saying, yeah, I want to mount this on a file system, I think you've said, okay, I want an artifact to do X, and therefore we're getting into the scenario that we want to probably be a little bit more specific about what that artifact is.
Right. One pattern we could do is, if it's a tar file, we do it one way and we allow the mounts, and if it's not, then we pass it to a plugin. We have the NRI plugin, right, for both Cryo and Containerd, where we can pass on the information that somebody wanted to do a mount of this, and you can just say, hey, do you want to do something different with it, or can you create a volume for us? I'm sorry, a mount for us for this particular volume request, instead of asking the container runtime to have some a priori understanding of every annotation type, right? Did that make sense? Or anybody?
I think it did. I'm looking up the answer to Harry's question here, which was about the config media type that they're using.
When I was looking at the config media type, I was getting different uses. Sometimes it was an OCI, sometimes it wasn't, right? It was another artifact type. It sort of depended.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my only concern. Like, as long as it's consistent on the artifact type, because right now the spec says config media type is the artifact type for it if it's a non-image thing being stored in OCI. So as long as that's a consistent media type, then the behavior you can more easily treat things easily.
Yeah, I was having that conversation with Sasha a few weeks back, where he had one artifact that would not load under Containerd because it had an invalid chain. And I said, "Do you have another artifact?" And he did. So he changed the artifact they were using the sample in Kubernetes where they were doing the mount for Cryo, because then that one could get loaded by Containerd. So it's one of those things. Yeah, we don't have enough rules and regs yet to say whether or not an artifact is valid for mounting. I think Brandon, that was a good way to explain it.
If you're looking for consistency, the artifact land is the wrong place to look. I linked over what the model spec group is doing right now. They've got an idea of how they want to try to standardize how they're shipping AI models, LLM models, whatever they're pushing around. And they've got their own config format they're using, and it's not the OCI one. It is their own thing, and it may or may not work in different scenarios.
Interesting.
I think they at least did the model FS with the diff IDs in there, and the idea was probably to try to make it look a little bit like an OCI config, probably to work in tools like Cryo. I'm guessing they didn't really need a model FS for what they were doing, but they needed it for the tools they were working with.
It's going to be interesting, and we're going to end up with other people that are just using the Containerd, not Cryo, that end up doing their own patterns as well. So yeah.
Honestly, you could have the empty JSON config that we've defined already and say you don't have a config. But that's going to raise up some issues in some of these implementations. They were trying to pull it down as if it's similar to an OCI image, and now you don't have a unique image ID.
Yeah, at one point I was thinking that some people are going to want to actually mount the config so they can see it for artifacts, but I don't know. So not just the not just the layer or blob contents.
Has anybody made that request to you yet? I know you thought people might want it, but
in the early days of the work that we were doing on ORAS, I was seeing that come through, where the text file would be, in the config itself, the SBOM, for example.
And was that ROM doing that? Honest question. He was throwing some stuff at me, and I was like, "ROM, this is the wrong place to do it," and he changed all of his stuff around. He was complaining about Reg Client having a bad handling of his artifact, and I was like, "What are you putting it over there for? Belongs in a blob. Belongs in the layer."
It'd be much more fun if we could mount the entire OCI layout of the image. Because
I
then
mean,
it would be in a standard format that is like already well defined and used by a bunch of things.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm supposed to cheer for that, but also really get triggered by that at the same time.
But then I know how to cache it as well, and it starts to make sense. Just saying.
It matches the existing data model. And the existing data model already has affordances for how to convert this data into file system style content. It's part of the spec.
I gotta ask, what does affordances mean? That's a new word for me. I'm kidding. I understand what you meant. Cool. Do we need a work group, Brandon, to have these conversations, or do we just want to keep letting it sort of continue as it's going as a,
We got nothing else to talk about during this hour of the week every week, so I'm more than happy to chat about this stuff.
yeah.
If someone wants to make a working group to do this, they're more than welcome to make a working group. I'm working grouped out right now.
Yeah.
I got 2 that have been half frozen for too long. I need to get back to and resurrect.
Okay. Let me talk to Sasha and see if he wants to put together a work group. It makes sense to do that. And I've got no druthers, but I do prefer to just reuse what we already got as TARs. It makes a lot of sense to me. It's not that much overhead, but it's not the same artifacts they've already been working with. So that could be an issue.
Like I say, more than happy to have them come here and have the conversation in this group. If you just need to use the Zoom
Yeah.
Zoom meeting ID, you're free to use that. And
I really like your idea about but these are the mountable OCI artifacts. I really
Yeah.
like that idea, that keeping that separate, or otherwise you can just create a plugin extension, right?
It's a use case, and so people have use cases for artifacts, and if their use cases they want to mount as a file system, then include the file system metadata as part of the artifact.
Yeah, so the NRI plugins already also work in Cryo. So if they were to provide that kind of extension plugin, if we just add it to NRI, and then we could run the same code, right, in container D, and that would actually create an additional mount in the OCI spec. And then, Bob's your uncle. Then we could go. Otherwise, if it's a tar, we could go ahead and do that on them. We could probably code that up fairly quickly. All right.
Yeah. If you want to have like a one-off meeting, use this Zoom, feel free, and let me know if you did that, because I'll go through and when I get the recordings, I'll make sure to notate that how it needs to be notated.
Yeah, we've got to keep this in progress for doing additional extensions to the volume mount API in Kubernetes. So I think that might be a good place for us to have this conversation. All right.
Cool.
As well. All right.
All right, all. Thanks for filling up a zero agenda meeting with an hour-long agenda.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of your week. Chat with you all later.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers all. Bye.